People are saying I'm just 1 week away from becoming Catholic, and they've been saying that for over a year. Hey guys, welcome back to KingdomCraft, where I build a big church in Minecraft while I talk about Christianity. Once again, this is now a public server, so we have a lot of people on who have come to build churches with me. And now I'm in the town of Manplatin. This is the Catholic city, so I'm going to be exploring some Catholic churches and other Catholic buildings while I explain why I'm not Catholic. So, I'm a Calvinist, so you might think this is going to be a whole, rant against Catholicism. But I'm actually the most pro-Catholic Calvinist you've probably ever heard of. I actually don't dislike Catholicism at all. I have a ton of respect for Catholicism, and although you might not get this sense from a lot of popular modern Calvinistic preachers like John MacArthur, see, here's a homage to the Queen of Heaven, which refers to the Blessed Virgin Mary. I wouldn't call MacArthur a real Calvinist. I have another video explaining that. But a lot of people think that Calvinism is like the antithesis of Catholicism. I'm a Reformed Presbyterian. But that's actually not true. There are a ton of parallels between Calvinism and Catholicism. I really think Calvinism is, or Reformed theology, they're kind of the same thing, is the Catholicism of Protestantism, because we both like to form a lot of rational systems to explain everything theologically. And I would say Lutheranism is like the Eastern Orthodoxy of Protestantism, if Reformed theology is the Catholicism of Protestantism, and I guess Baptist theology would be the Protestantism of Protestantism. But yeah, so I'm not really against Catholicism. I much prefer Catholicism over a lot of other forms of Christianity. I'd much rather be Catholic than Eastern Orthodox, for example. A lot of Protestants, for some reason, think that they'd rather be Eastern Orthodox than Catholic, just because they have a sort of historical grudge against Catholicism. But in reality, there's a lot that Protestants and Catholics have in common, the common Western Christian tradition, that they do not have in common with the Eastern Orthodox. Like, for example, the doctrine of God is the same in Calvinism as it is in Catholicism. However, the Eastern Orthodox have a slightly different doctrine of God, not to the extent that it's heretical, but it still influences how they think and act. So, but the Eastern Orthodox video is a video for another day. I did make a video explaining why I'm not Eastern Orthodox, but that was when I had no followers, so I didn't put very much thought and effort into it. And rightly so, it was criticized by Orthodox channels for being badly researched, and they're right about that. So I'm going to make another video explaining why I'm not Eastern Orthodox. So there's a lot of things I disagree with Catholicism on, and I could go over each one of them in this video, but that doesn't really matter. Only one issue really matters in this debate, and I'm going to explain why. You see, the central doctrine of Roman Catholicism is the doctrine of the papacy. They believe that Jesus Christ appointed St. Peter as his vicar on earth, the leader of the church on earth, and that every pope is a descendant of Peter, and shares Peter's role of authority to be the leader of the church on earth. So if the doctrine of the papacy is true, then everything the Catholics say is true, whether I personally agree with them now or not. So if I become convinced that the doctrine of the papacy is true, then I'm just going to have to get over my other disagreements with Catholicism, because then it's going to mean that they have the right, they have the authority to rightly interpret the scriptures. If the papacy is wrong, then Catholicism as a whole is wrong. So I could spend this whole video discussing every single point of disagreement between Calvinism and Catholicism, but that's not necessary. I just have to explain why I don't agree with the papacy. So Catholicism is all about tradition. I don't want to say all about. They put a strong emphasis on tradition and being in line with the teachings of the early church and of the church fathers, which is good. Contrary to popular belief, Reformed and Lutheran forms of Protestantism also care a lot about following the traditions of the church fathers. We just don't see tradition as authoritative as scripture. But what a lot of Protestants will always say in response to Catholicism is that the doctrine of the papacy can't really be found in the church fathers. And at first, during the Reformation, the Catholics tried to dispute this. But eventually you had Cardinal John Henry Newman, who came up with the development of doctrine hypothesis, basically admitting to the Protestants that a lot of the Catholic doctrines are not present in the early church fathers. There's sort of seeds of Catholic doctrines are present. For example, there is some early church father might say, hey, St. Peter, he was a really important bishop. And then they'll say, see, that's evidence for the completely developed doctrine of the papacy. But that's not exactly true. So, yeah, the doctrine of the papacy, it's nowhere in Scripture. The closest there is when Jesus says to Peter that he's giving him the keys to the kingdom, but there's many different interpretations of that. And you'll find different interpretations of that in the Church Fathers. So you don't find a developed doctrine of the papacy in Scripture or in the Church Fathers. It's a doctrine that really develops over time. The idea of the Pope having any sort of infallible authority didn't exist at all until the First Vatican Council in the 1800s. And then the Second Vatican Council, they seem to try and walk that back a little bit to say, oh, no, he's only infallible in very, very special cases. And it's what you see with Catholicism. They really do sort of modify and change their doctrines a lot of the times. Protestants do that too, but Protestants admit that the church is not infallible. But since the Catholics claim the church is infallible, there's a much higher standard of consistency they need to follow for that to be true, but you don't really see that sort of consistency. But I still have a lot of respect for the Catholic Church. I do not believe it's heretical. I think it's heterodox compared to Protestant, but it's not heretical. And there's a ton I respect about Catholicism, and I honestly think in today's culture, Catholics are doing the best for the culture. For example, this huge tower, it says it's the Sheen building. I think someone built it in memory of Archbishop Fulton Sheen, who is a brilliant guy. All of you should listen to him. He's a old Catholic preacher who's on the radio and stuff. And yeah, Catholics make a bunch of awesome stuff like this. So I really respect Catholicism. I respect how they are very good at reconciling faith and science, something a lot of evangelical Protestants are laughably bad at. I have another video about like the whole evolution thing. So yeah, another thing about Catholicism that I agree with is their emphasis on like the beauty of church and worship and stuff, but that's not a uniquely Catholic thing. A lot of times you'll see Catholic memes where they say, oh, a Catholic church is a beautiful cathedral and a Protestant church is like in the back of an Applebee's. That applies to a subset of modern evangelical churches. That does not apply to historic Protestant churches. In America, like, and Europe too, historic mainline Protestant churches, like what I'm part of, are just as beautiful as Catholic churches. They're both beautiful. Same with Orthodox churches. Most churches historically have been beautiful. The only exception to that is modern evangelicalism, but modern evangelicalism really does not represent historic Protestantism. It's connected in some ways, but it's disconnected from the Protestant tradition. And Protestants do have a tradition, contrary to what a lot of Catholics say. Also, there's a nice, this Catholic church was just built. It's called like St. Augustine Catholic Church or something. Let me look at it. Yeah, this is St. Augustine's Cathedral Catholic Church. So yeah, this is a really cool city. A lot of the buildings in the city were there like years before this server was opened as a Christian server. But yeah, that's basically why I'm not Catholic. I don't agree with the papacy. I don't believe the church is infallible. I have a video explaining why I am Protestant, which goes into more of like why I don't think it's good to say the church is infallible. But yeah, that's why I'm not Catholic, but I still have a ton of respect for the Catholic Church. So thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you later. Bye.